question for you, actually, Tom. Cus would say to you guys, fighting is 75% in the mind, 25% in the body. So you know, you're often hearing speaking about character and those type of things. So as far as character traits, what would he talk about to you guys?
Great question. So, okay, Cus utilized boxing as the metaphor, as the building block for developing and strengthening that person's character. Now, mind you, a lot of guys, Tyson, I'm not going to exclude myself. I didn't come from a bad background like Tyson, of course. I had a loving mother and father, very supportive network, but I had my own desire, my own interest. And so I found my way to Cus. I was doing a lot of, I went to school, was a lot of racial tensions and riots, and so I was fighting a lot. And so I found my way to boxing, and I knew my interest level exceeded what would happen locally. So then I ended up going back to train with Cus. Now, Cus trained my father when he was a boy. Now, just so you understand that Cus evolved. The way he trained my father and Floyd Patterson was different than how he trained Jose Torres. Even Jose Torres demonstrated more of Cus's style than Patterson did. Torres was even more efficient at it. So, and that's about a 10-year gap of how he was training Patterson and my dad to how he trained Jose Torres. So if you look at Torres's fights, you see a lot more of a lot more of the head movement and a lot more similarity to what Cus evolved to when he trained with Tyson. So to your point though, for character, boxing was that metaphor. Boxing is something that and you guys know, sometimes you walk out of the gym, you feel like, man, I feel great. Next day, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm bum of the month. I'm terrible because you had a rough day and things were just, your timing was off, whatever. Your rhythm's not quite there. So, there's a commitment, there's building blocks, there's a sacrifice, there's a perseverance. These are all building blocks in life. And Cus would say, if you apply the same principles you'll gain through doing this sport, you'll be successful no matter what your endeavor may be. And so what is it? What are those building blocks? Well, we know hard work, dedication, perseverance, positive affirmation, creative visualization, success, failure, you name it. All of these building blocks that he used, Cus would use hypnosis, meditation. All these things, and this is where the psychology comes in, because you have to believe you're a champion. You have to believe you're going to be a fighter of great success. And when I first spoke to Cus on the phone, real long story short, he said this was the most important thing that he asked. He said, and my answer, he goes, "Why do you want to be a fighter?" And I said, "Cus, I want to be a middleweight champion of the world, and I think you can help me." Based on that answer, he said, right away, he said, "I'd like to meet you." Now, living with him for the next four or 5 years, I've heard people call on the phone and he asks the same question: why do you want to be a fighter? And you hear guys, and you hear it's like, well, make some money or figure things out, or try, I don't try, blah blah blah, anything but. And he'd say, "I'm sorry, I'm not interested," and he'd hang up.
Wow.
But because I had a goal, I had a destination, a point, and a purpose. Money, and he'd say, money will be there. Money will be, if you're the best at something, if you work hard and you attain that greatness, you will be financially rewarded. But if you're doing it for the money, that's a very thin level of motivation, and that's a thin purpose. If I want to be champion, but I want to be the greatest champion, right? And I work hard to make that happen. And Cus will say, I'll judge you by your actions, not your words. A lot of people say what they're going to do, but not a lot of people will do what they say. Wow. So, those were along the lines of when he would talk about. So for someone, let's say someone like Tyson, Cus would say, and you hear him talk about in interviews, that you can see wonderful. Thank God to YouTube. You can listen to this great mentor talk about how he'd peel back the layers that inhibit a mind. Sometimes the damages from childhood, which could be vast, and get down to that core, that structure that you could then build from. And it's, you know, much like when you go into boot camp, you know, you've got sergeants, you got, you know, drill sergeants, they're going to just break you and break you and break you. By the time you emerge, but the vast majority will have risen to the occasion and will now have that character, that integrity, that, you know, that brand called Marine or Navy SEAL wasn't just handed out the day you signed up. It was what you went through to achieve those plateaus and those accomplishments. So that's what you get from you know, that's the character you'll develop.
So did he do that systematically, or it was like an intuitive thing where someone became receptive to what he was saying, or he just read someone that came to him, as you said, the first question that he asked, and then over a period of time, he would just, you know, through his words and actions, he'd start peeling back those layers. Like, what, as an example, what would he say? I mean, I can't really imagine him yelling, you know, like, blah, 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 or barking like a Marine sergeant, or would he, you know?
Yeah, he would. He wouldn't say, "You're a maggot, you're useless, your mother hates you, that's why I hate you." He wasn't that kind of guy, but he wasn't easy to please. Okay, so there's kind of some funny stories about that, but Cus always kept you. He probably went to, you know, if you looked at these great mentors, great coaches, they're never satisfied. They're always expect more from you. Like Bill Parcells, American football. Bill Parcells, if you played with him and you were the kicker, you know, he had a kicker on the team, and he said, "Yeah, I bet you $500 you missed this shot. You can't make it. You cannot make it. Why? Because you kick like a girl." He would constantly talk them down and they'd want to prove themselves. In fact, they've done psychological tests, even recently, where they'll have a guy badgering somebody and, you know, shooting free throws. And a guy could shoot free throws, and they'll badger and badger and badger, and that guy will shoot more free throws versus somebody's like, "You know, you're good. You can do it. You're the best. You can do this no matter what." So interestingly enough, the adversity, the desire for us as competitors to rise and to prove ourselves is better when we're challenged versus somebody telling you how great you are.
Wow. It's sorry to interrupt. It's almost like a lacquer band then. So it's like he's pushing you back and stretching you back and wanting you to slingshot forward, right?
He would push you exactly to the point. He would push you to that element where, you know, push the button. So you never quite knew. You able to hear me? Copy
Yes.
me? You hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So he pushed your buttons, and he kind of trying to find your triggers and see where it might be. And for each person's individual.